Do you know what it means to fill to tonnage or to pick up to tonnage or to fill a train? In this video, we're going to explore that a little bit. We're going to make up an eastbound through freight in Seattle headed towards Chicago. And then we're going to stop in the next town, Everett, and pick up some extra cars so that the train is at its full allowable length and weight or tonnage. This is Burr Stewart, and welcome to the 48th video in my series of model railroad operations videos that have been taken here on my HO scale Burlington Northern model railroad set in 1973. The action starts here in the Interbay Yard, also called Balmer Yard, and we see a lone AKASO C425 running through with some ore cars that I recently picked up at a swap meet. It has nothing to do with the story of today's video, but I wanted to start out with some horn blowing, so there you go. The next important piece of action is the locomotives that will be used on our eastbound freight coming out of the Interbay engine terminal and approaching the main line. These are F45s today, which is some of our favorite engines. They're being driven today by Lisa, and you'll hear Scott, who's the yardmaster, telling her what to do next.
We're gonna stop right here.
Okay.
I have a lot of momentum set into my locomotives, so it sometimes takes operators a while to learn how to use the brakes and change the direction of the locomotives as needed.
Yeah.
The string of cars about 4 tracks over from the locomotives is our intended train. And since we're looking northbound at the yard, that means that the engines need to go to the far end of the cut in order to hook up to it and pull it out of town. Wait, northbound, I hear you say? I thought we were going eastbound. Well, in the Seattle region, in order to go east, you first have to go north to Everett, and then you can go east. It has to do with a large mountain range called the Cascade Mountains, which are fun to visit, but you wouldn't want to have to engineer a railroad grade across them. But that's exactly what the Great Northern Railway did, and they had to build several tunnels to make it work. As far as we go on this layout is just up to Skykomish Yard on the western side of the mountain range, which is where they staged the helpers for the 2+% grade that went over the top of the mountain. But that brings us to the important subject of tonnage and why we have 3 F45s pulling this train. Tonnage refers to the total weight of the train that the given number of locomotives can haul at their horsepower rating, and generally the railroad would have a limit on the tonnage so that the engines didn't stall on the steep grades. But what happens if you have some eastbound cars in Interbay, as we have here, but they don't completely max out the tonnage that's available to these locomotives? Well, the answer is you depart Seattle with fewer than the total number of cars you can carry, and then add cars up to your tonnage rating when you get to the next town. And that's what it means to fill a train to tonnage, or just to fill the train, because given these 3 powerful locomotives, we can take more cars than the ones that we happen to have ready to go here in Interbay.
Y'all lined up.
Getting our locomotives over onto the B track involves that crossover that they're taking now. And the blue boxcar is the beginning of our train that we're backing onto. This view that we're watching from is similar to the Dravis Street overpass, just a little bit higher altitude, where you would see the car repair shed on the left and the engine terminal on the right, looking northbound toward the Emerson Street overpass. These engines, by the way, are Athearn Genesis engines with Tsunami DCC sound decoders. Bang! Well, what's left? We have to do an air brake test and I guess we need a caboose on this train.
Okay, well, I gotta go get a caboose down there, so you have your braking cut in the air and start charging it. Takes a long time.
As he said, it takes a long time to run the caboose all the way back to the end of the train, and I don't have the right camera angle on it today, so we'll just bypass that part, and you'll have to accept that we did get a caboose on this train, and now we're ready to depart.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, I know exactly. Can you make that? Let's see, I think that's a number 6. The beacon light, you put number 6 on.
Yeah, number 6. And 0 is your headlight.
0 for the headlight. There we go. We got a train.
Feels good to get this train made up and heading out of town. Now we can get back to the subject of what does it mean to fill a train. As you'll see when we get to the end and see the caboose, it's not quite the 25 car max length that we have for these trains. So we'll head around to Everett and pick up a few more cars before going over the mountains. But wait a minute, wasn't I talking about tonnage and the number of tons that the locomotives could haul? Why did I just say 25 car maximum length? Well, filling a train can be either filling it to the maximum length, which would be dictated by sidings on the railroad, or the maximum tonnage, dictated by a variety of factors, but particularly which locomotives were assigned to that train. So they're both used, and it's a little confusing. In this case, since our staging yard can only hold trains up to 25 cars long, we tend to use 25 car length rather than a complicated accounting procedure of figuring out how many tons we actually have in the train. Yet another example of how model railroads compromise from all of the complicated work of an actual railroad. You might recognize that Sioux Line boxcar there from the previous video, number 47. In the background, you can hear a couple of people arguing about which cars are they going to pull out of the Delta Yard in Everett in order to fill out this train. So I guess we better get with the program and move the camera angle over to Everett. There we go. Now our train, partially filled, has arrived in Everett's Delta Yard. The first thing to do is cut the power off of the existing train and then go into the yard and pull the cars that we want to add. This seems very straightforward, but for some reason today we had trouble deciding exactly how many cars to add, and because the train was long enough to block the crossover in the middle of the siding, we had to pull all the way to the front end of the siding off the camera to the left in order to come back on the siding track where you see that tank car. Once again, this is what I call reality model railroading. We're not doing it the most efficient way, we're just doing it a way that we could figure out. So after running all the way to the end of the siding on the left and then coming back into the siding track, we can now go pick up the cars on the siding. I'm looking at the prototype train instructions for train number 82, which is the train that we're roughly emulating here in this operation. I'll just read you a few things off of the instructions sheet, dated 1975. That's close enough to our 1973 target year. So, again, this is train number 82. The priorities are listed as 1, U.S. mail, 2, perishables and mechanical reefers, 3, autos, 4, loaded topsy-copsy, 5, pulp from Ward's Cove, and 6, other Northtown, which of course is the yard in Minneapolis, where this train would presumably terminate. In Balmer Yard, it says 75 cars, 4,200 ton maximum with 4 high horsepower units. So they're giving both a car number max, probably for length of train, and then a tonnage max based on the high horsepower units. They'd probably have to recalculate the maximum length if they had a different head end. And then in Everett, the instructions say no set out, pick up on head end if necessary. And they repeat the same 75 car, 4,200 ton maximum. It's fun to imagine what it means, pick up on head end if necessary. I don't think they meant mess around with the train interminably if necessary. But since this is a model railroad and we're not quite sure what we're doing, that's kind of what we're doing here, is making decisions about which cars to put in the train and switching them in and out in a fairly awkward manner. Really, just because the crossover is in the wrong place. As you see, we've kind of recovered from that now because he pushed the train back enough to use the crossover. So from here on out, it's a pretty straightforward case of picking up enough cars to fill out the train, which again was the whole point of this. So I'm going to speed up the rest of the video, and you can see how even though we have a very simple thing to do here, we get confused about just exactly how many cars we want to add to the train, and so we go back and forth a couple of times. But enjoy. It'll go by quickly at high speed. After he made that first cut, I told him that he had one too many cars, so he had to make a second cut. Why make one cut when you can make two, right?
All right, the head brakeman is up on the head end. We'll have to pull ahead slowly so the rear brakeman can catch the caboose as we go by, and we can go ahead. Okay.
And that, friends, is what it means to fill a train. Our instructions said it could be a maximum length of 25 cars. We departed Seattle with only 18 or 19 cars. We added 5 cars when we got to the first stop, which was Everett, and now we have a full-length train headed to Minneapolis. There are those auto racks that they mentioned as one of the priorities for this train. And one other point on this. Why couldn't we have filled the train with cars to drop off at Everett when we left Seattle? I think the answer is that the instructions for this train were not to do any set-outs, because that would have taken time and it would have slowed the train down. They wanted the train to get to Minneapolis in a reasonable time, so they said, just if necessary, fill the train at the first or second stop after you leave. But then just, highball it to Minneapolis. Don't keep stopping and dropping off cars and doing air brake tests and so on. The set-outs are for the local or lower priority trains. This is supposed to be a high priority transcontinental train. So there it goes. A few minutes later, after climbing the hill, it reemerges over the trestle at the far end of the room. I don't have video footage of the entire passage of this train up to the Skycomish Yard, but I at least wanted you to see that it continued uphill towards its goal. But in order for the Skycomish staging yard to receive it, we had to remove the Pacific Zip, which was also parked there, which gives us a chance to just enjoy a final bonus shot of the Pacific Zip, BN's early high-priority intermodal train, passing through Skycomish on its way to Seattle. In the early years of the BN, this train was overpowered and only had a few cars in it, which makes it perfect for modeling. And they also carried a couple of express box cars at the rear of the train. And we handle that in other videos in this channel. But like I said, this is just a bonus opportunity. Not only to watch the train, but to see that I have some clearance issues with hitting the tree as the trailers go by. We'll get the crew working on that soon. Well, that's all for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video and enjoy all the rest of the videos on my channel. And for now, this is Burr Stewart wishing you much fun with trains.
So we're going to have to go all the way down here, cross over and run down the main line and zigzag to get on that blue box car.